who would have thought in 2025, welcome into the studio, the Hardy Boys. Have you ever thought about, like, I'm sure when you came up with the Hardy Boys, you didn't think all these years later we'll be full adult men and still be, because you can't be the Hardy Men.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Hardy Men would just sound bad.
It would sound bad. It would sound bad. And I think people also, like, I mean, you're so attached to the youth of so many of us that, like, as long as you guys are still the Hardy Boys, we're still the kids that were watching the Hardy Boys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's this cyclical thing.
That does work out. I was just going to say, too, it was wild because we never chose Hardy Boys specifically. And it's funny, they wanted to do that because I think the Hardy Boys mystery novels that were out before, just people knew those and said, oh, your guys' names are Hardy. And they're like, okay, let's make them be the Hardy Boys. Oh, you can't put it with an S, though, because that's copywritten. We have to put it with a Z. And that's how we were stuck with the Hardy Boys.
And how did you manage? I mean, what's amazing about you guys is that you've seen and continue to see, I mean, pretty much everything there. Aside from having a WCW run, you've seen pretty much absolutely everything else in the world of professional wrestling. How have you managed to keep the Hardy Boys name? Do you switch the S and the Z? Do you go, like, has WWE ever been like, when you go elsewhere, well, you can't take that name because we own the Z?
We've never pushed our luck. We just do Hardys.
Hardys,
keep it very
that's
simple.
it.
It's just Hardys with an S. Hardys.
S.
The Hardys.
No, it's smart. It's smart. And did you ever, I mean, the theme, the fact that, like, people have been able to use it, like whether it, I mean, it being WWE and then it coming up, the fact that it wasn't a WWE creation,
right?
AEW is able to use it, you're able to bring it to TNA. I mean, that's kind of also not a typical, I mean, you never hear that in wrestling, right? Was that just like kind of good fortune at the right time?
Yeah, that music is like I remember watching Ghost Hunters and I heard that music and I was like, oh my God, that's our music. And it's been on so many other shows I've heard over the years, but also another title that I like this run in TNA as because of Santino, we're known as the Hard Boys. So that's kind of cool as well.
I think Santino's trying to get dirty, man.
Nasty.
It's really cool because that's like copyright free music that can just be licensed.
Yeah,
you know, so that's how that works. You know, we're able to have an AEW, we're able to have it in TNA, and it's really cool that it's traveled to different promotions with us. And it really is when we first got established and over, that was our music. You know, we actually started out with a different music, and we had it for probably 4 or 5 weeks. The other music,
it was that real fast music. I forget the name. But
yeah, we had it. We had a different song, and then they ended up going with that, which was Loaded, and it really became associated with us once we started getting over, and we won the tag team titles, and we had the tag team ladder match at No Mercy 99 against Edge and Christian, which is the match that put us on the map. So that music is associated with us. So whenever it travels somewhere else, it's iconic at this point. You know, it's very, very cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. I think, during the Attitude Era, the 2 songs I would hear on commercials were that, and I think Hardcore Holly's song was in a ton of commercials too. It would always come up. I mean, do you guys, reflect now as you're still like extremely active, still extremely relevant, still kind of reinventing yourselves in ways, like how often do you think back at the fact that like there are a lot of guys that come in the way you guys came in, which is like coming in as enhancement talent, whatever you need from us, if you're in town, we'll go. They say, don't do the enhancement talent thing because that's how they're going to look at you and you'll never be able to achieve what you think you want to achieve. You have to go away. For you guys, I mean, coming in, making your own gear, slowly kind of clawing up, you were enhancement talent enough to the fact that people who watched every week knew exactly who you were. And then eventually getting a little spot here, a little spot there, getting the tag team championships to the point that you're at now. Do you ever think back, at those kids that were coming in as enhancement talent and the advice that you got at the time and whether or not it was relevant advice or not?
It makes me think, wasn't there a promoter when we were going to WWE every now and then and being the jobbers against the superstars that they because we were losing all the time, he said, y'all can't do that. It looks bad on us, some independent promotion in North or South Carolina. But I just remember after my second match with 1-2-3 Kid at the time, I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to make somebody remember me. This is going to work. It's all going to come true, this dream we have. And it sure did.
Yeah, there was a promotion we wrestled for. It was ACW. They had local TV in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. Not in a ton of markets, but they did have some TV there. And we were working with them, and they liked us a lot. And they said, you guys go to WWE and you get beat. I was thinking about making you the tag team champions. You can't do that. You don't look good. Like if you're gonna get beat there, you're gonna get beat here. And it's funny because one of the guys who was the biggest investor ended up leaving them because of that. Because we said, okay, that's fine. We'll just wrestle somewhere else. There's tons of places we can wrestle. And he ended up going with us. That his name was Thomas Simpson. He ended up giving us a bunch of money, and that's kind of how we bought a new ring, and we bought barricades and a whole bunch of different things. And we started Omega. We like upgraded our promotion to Omega. So that was a cool thing. And there was one guy who was a very famous indie wrestler at the time. He said, guys, you guys are really talented. You got to stop zobbing. You got to stop zobbing. He said, because all this zobbing is going to get you labeled as a zobber your entire career. You're just going to be a zobber. You got to stop. Where he was like cutting the carny off, like cutting it in half. And it was so funny because we said, well, we believe if we go out and we work really hard and we bust our ass, that we can earn a spot because they like us. They use us every time. They say we take good bumps. We do this, and we think we can gain an opportunity. And lo and behold, we did.
That's and it seems like such a simple thing, right? Just work hard, treat people well, do a good job, and you'll succeed.
Yeah.
But very few people actually have that story.
Yeah, and we were also the business was in the process of changing too.
Yeah,
because it was during the Attitude Era. They were starting to peel back the curtain a little bit, and you were starting to understand what's going on. Like, these guys who just get beat all the time, they don't necessarily suck. They're just like they're typecast in this role.
Right. Fans started to go like, let's appreciate the work that's going on as opposed to just figuring out who's winning and who's losing. That's a great point.
Yeah, and I'll never forget whenever we signed, and in 1998, when we technically won our first match under WWE contract, right, WWF at the time, we came out and we wrestled Kantai, and I remember they sent us out first, and Mike Chioda was with us. He was in the ring. He was the ref for this, and here comes, like it comes up from commercial, we're already in the ring, and they're introducing us, and Kantai comes out, and someone said, "Hey, jobbers, who's beating you up tonight?" And I remember Mike Chioda said, "Not tonight, boys."
That's right.
That's awesome. And that was your first was your first win.
That was Breakdown 1998, yes.
Wow. Where do you rank that match? Because that's one of those Hardy Boys matches that nobody else would remember, but it was obviously very meaningful to you guys. Is that one that you go like, no, that's pretty high on my list because like that was when it was like, okay, this thing that was our plan that some people said isn't going to work, it's working.
It was. I mean, it was special, no doubt. The one thing I think about more than anything else is when you have young, crazy, insane, indestructible Jeff Hardy. Mm-hmm. He runs and dives over the top rope in a swanton to Kantai on the floor, and they just split, and he crashes and just hits the concrete. And it was like, and he did it like it was nothing.
Like nothing.
Like nothing.
For sure, insane. And I was so excited to do that. So excited. Man, we had made it.
I mean, when you because you still come across somehow as indestructible, which I can't imagine is still the case.
He is somehow. He's an anomaly.
Because you guys were both doing, but especially you, Jeff. You were doing everything that every person would tell you. You can't work like that. You can't keep doing that. You're only going to be able to do that for 2 years. The longevity of your career and still doing what you're doing. Do you really think it is just an anomaly? Like I'm genetically built differently, or is there some kind of magic trick that allows people to swanton off 16-foot ladders and somehow survive?
I truly believe that I'm a human anomaly. I think TNA put out a disc, a DVD back when there were DVDs called Human Anomaly, and I feel like, and I think it's got a lot to do with just the way I've kept my mother's presence alive within me and my soul, because she died when I was 10. So that was naturally rough. And our dad helped us make it to the point of us succeeding in pro wrestling. And now they're both together again. I think so. My ideas and experiences with the afterlife and her being with me each and every day has been huge for me.
And you think that that's what allows you to do some of these?
I think it has a lot to do with it.
That's wild.
Yeah, for sure.
That's why, just because you kind of take any sort of concern out of the picture and you just kind of do it?
I think it keeps me a little superhuman.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And you have to be, right? Does it feel different now when you land a swanton? Now, does it feel a lot different than when you were a kid? Or not really?
I went through a period when I was doing a lot of croutons, and I would just say I can't control it anymore. I used to be able to control it really good. But I've been really good the last year or so, man. At doing pretty well. But yeah, it feels about the same, man.
That's wild.
I'm blessed, man.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say there's control, because I feel like part of the Jeff Hardy thing was that you would take these leaps and you would just be able to the way your limbs would move as you were falling. It really did look like a car crash. Was there a control to that? Like, did you know, like, oh, this is going to make a big thing? Or did you just, like, no, I'm falling and my limbs are going crazy?
Yeah, that was all. It just happened. And naturally, as you can imagine, it takes a lot for my standards are very high when I really want something to look nasty and destructive and hardcore. So, yeah, it takes a lot. But every time I do see my body like go through these things, and I'm super proud of it. It's been every bump I've ever took has been worth it because, I if it wasn't for the fans, there would be no us, and I just love to give them the amount that they paid for, and know that they saw Jeff Hardy, and he gave it all he had.
Will you look back at stuff that you've done, even if it's recent, and go like, I can't believe we did that? Because there's stuff that, both of you have done that, not from a, oh, I'm so good at performing perspective, but just like there isn't footage of humans doing this in a wrestling ring, and now there is because you did it.
With the chair shots to the head, all the time, back when we used to do that all the time, I can't believe, but I have to, that we used to hit each other that hard directly in the head.
It's nuts, right?
But also during that time, you have to keep in mind, it was Attitude Era, it was Wild Wild West, and us being young guys, if someone was coming at a chair shot at our head, if we would put up our hands, we would be reprimanded, we would be insulted. You know what I mean? That's
interesting.
That was the culture then. You had to like be a man.
Right.
You had to be a man and do it. And that's just kind of how we were born and bred. That's how you were taught then, especially from the vets in the locker room. And even the right here in New York, Madison Square Garden, Royal Rumble 2000, where we had the tables match, they had to trim that match down because there were so many unprotected chair shots. They cut like 3 or 4 minutes off our time, and we had a little huddle in the back right before we're going out through the curtain. Guys, they've cut our time. The match is going to look different. Like, what should we do? We need to like take a vote and decide what we're going to do. We got to get a game plan together. Are we going to cut some of the cool stuff we have, or what? And we said, Bubba and I, we kind of looked at each other. We said, guys, you just want to burn through it? Like, let's just make it happen. Let's burn through it. And we're not going to be selling as much as we should, but this is an opportunity for us. And let's just burn through it. And we did. And if you, like, there's the spot where I'm on the top turnbuckle and I jump to the floor and I go through a table where I miss a leg drop. And Devon, like, rolls off and rolls around another table. Jeff flies through and, like, goes immediately through the table. Like, that was going to be a much longer spot. And we were going to take time with it and let people sell and move slowly. But we burned through that match. And it's crazy. Looking back, it was like an incredible car crash, and it made it really stand out at the time.
Especially because, and I'm only just thinking about this now as we're talking about this, I never really considered the fact that the main event of that show, Royal Rumble aside, is also the no holds barred match with Triple H and Cactus Jack.
And I am pretty sure that is why our match got cut, just so that we wouldn't do as much crazy stuff.
Because just as you're describing
they would have more of the stage, and we're just like, okay, like.
But it's tough to stand out when that match, because that's a classic too.
Yes.
And when you have that match that has all this stuff in it, it's then very difficult for you guys to, after the show's over, to stand out and be like, but that was also a highlight.
And exactly. And here's another point. If you go back and watch that match, Vince was adamant. Remember, Vince called us in his office. He was adamant. He wanted me to grab Jeff after he does that swanton bomb off the, above the entrance.
Yeah,
when he does
the
it.
Taxi.
And he puts Devon through the table. He wanted me to help Jeff up and then get him into the ring, and like he wanted us to raise our hands and get a beauty shot in the ring. Dude, if you watch how fast that happens, as soon as that hits on Devon, boom, we were already over our time, right? Jeff goes through the table on Devon. He's sitting there. Music hits and they're cheering. I grab Jeff and I pick him up like it's Weekend at Jeffrey's, Weekend at Bernie's, and I take him and I go to the barricade. I throw Jeff over the barricade, and then I get him and I throw him in the ring, and then we get up and we do have that beauty shot. But I mean, that's, once again, that should have taken 60 seconds to do.
Right.
But we did it in 12.
Right. But also because you have to get it, right?
Yes,
this is our opportunity to get it.
Oh, we had to. He was adamant.
And he was, He
was adamant.
Wow. Especially after everything that you've been through, that always boggles my mind, right? Especially in matches like that you guys not only have to do all of this stuff all at the same time that for most of us would already be too overwhelming, but then you have to remember your camera cues. You have to remember the celebration at the end. You have to remember, like, it's the last thing that would be on my mind after that.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
And even when we started talking about that, I mean, there were like 7 or 8 unprotected, super hard chair shots in that match, and they had to trim those all out, especially as time has gone on and CTE.
And you realize what's actually going on.
Yeah.
Because back then we also didn't have any of this information. You didn't know anything about like long-term effects. None of the research.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think even then anybody thought it was good for us. We knew it would be sure. I don't think being taking bumps and falling on wooden steel is probably good for you either. But
right.
It is what it is. But that is definitely something that was extremely dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, did you ever worry, especially as your legacy was building and you were doing so much in such a short period of time, that like you said, you brought up that first ladder match with Edge and Christian, which to me is still, I mean, it's my favorite ladder match of all time, just because I love those matches that I remember watching live, and it changes my perspective of wrestling. I remember WrestleMania 12 as a kid. That was the first time I realized I can watch a 60-minute wrestling match and love the wrestling for it. Mm-hmm. I've changed my perspective of wrestling. I look at ladder matches completely differently, and it's because of watching that match. But you have that match, you have 2 TLCs, you have the Royal Rumble match. Like, you start doing so much stuff. At any point, do you go, we need to slow down so people can remember this one and that one?
I mean, that's definitely a valid point. Fortunately for us, I think the stuff was booked in a smart way.
Yes.
How it was this was at No Mercy. We were given the opportunity, and because we hit a home run, we hit a grand slam with the tag team ladder match at No Mercy 99. We were given the opportunity for the Royal Rumble match against the Dudleys, and that ended up being extremely successful too. Even though we probably pissed some people off because we went over our time and we still jammed everything in, didn't sell as much as we should have. Mm-hmm. But once again, it led to the platform of the Triangle Ladder match at WrestleMania 2000, which was in theory the first ever TLC match. But then SummerSlam was technically the first TLC, and then TLC 2. Those things were spaced out enough so they did seem important. Where wrestling nowadays, you can see crazy matches every single week, and I feel like a lot of things get lost in the shuffle.
And yeah, I agree with that. And also, when you break it down like that, there's this clear build.
Yes.
Over time, right? And every time you're like, we're not just going and doing it again. How do we, just like you said, it's a triangle ladder match. Now it's a TLC match. Yes. Now it's a TLC, and that's done over the course of a year. I think that the fact that you can look at that and there's a clear build over the course of, a year and a half, 2 years, is important.
Yes. And it's a definitive date. That's a big show where everything's going to culminate.
Yeah. I think that's 100% right. When you guys first started, I mean, when the Hardy Boys got really so big that it's like the only place to go next is to split you guys up and be 2 single stars, right? And I think the Hardy Boys are one of those rare teams where it's like, you've got 2 single stars here because the team is so big and because you guys are so unique. Like, you are such a team, but also as performers singly so unique and have these different skill sets, right? Mm-hmm. When that time came to be like, we're going to go off on our own, was there any trepidation? Was there any like, I don't know, man, this tag team thing is working? Or were you both ready to be like, no, I think we could do this?
I think I was ready. I always remember there was one moment, I'm not sure when it was, but wasn't there something to where they wanted me to kiss Lita?
Yeah.
There was some kind of angle like that, and that was the first time. No, I'm not doing that.
I don't think any of us were cool with it. Everybody was uncomfortable. And I think we still had a lot to do with the team. That is when they first tried to program us together, and that was like in late 2001, I want to say. Because Vince was always at that time looking for guys who could be top of the card, ticket sellers and ticket movers. Like, oh, these are a great tag team. They're both insanely over. Like, let's make them single stars. Let's make them single stars. That was kind of his mindset because he thought tag team wrestling wasn't super important.
Mm-hmm. And that was when you were like, yeah, I'm not doing that.
I said I wasn't going to do that, but I think I was prepared. But I was also starting to head down a pretty nasty spiral, with the whole, drug addiction stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think I was well aware that I could be successful if I had my head right.
Yeah, and when you both then, I mean, without that much time passing, end up becoming simultaneous world champions singly. You're WWE champion, you're the ECW champion. Do you guys reflect upon moments like that? I know I asked you about reflecting earlier, but like, do you do that? And I only ask you that because not only have we seen the journey that you've been on, but your brothers, you've been on this journey your entire lives. That's an even bigger thing. When you look at each other and you're both singles champions in the WWE, I mean, it's almost like it's got to be surreal.
It was a very cool deal. And it was... It was very cool that I was given opportunities at that time because Vince is always notorious for if there's a tag team and he splits them up, he usually prefers one guy a little more.
Sure.
And Jeff always, and I say this all the time, always historically the most popular, right? I mean, this guy's beloved, no doubt about it. But, with that same thing being said, I'm pretty popular. I do pretty good on my own too. I'm so glad I got the opportunity when we first split, when I did Matt Hardy version 1, the Sensei of Mattitude, because that is where I thrive. Like, I feel like the essence of what the Hardy Boys is, two guys that, fear is only a 4-letter word, adrenaline junkies. Jeff epitomizes that. I mean, that is truly what he is. Me, not as much. When I get to be a character that's like over the top, almost half-assed delusional, I feel like that's when I'm the best. I've broken Matt as well.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that's where I thrive.
That is true. There's like the same way, Jeff, for you physically, there's an unbridled nature to what you're doing. Creatively, Matt, like you've multiple times been so outside of the box, and it's worked so well. Like, I mean, there was just something about, like, because there was that thing, right? Like, oh, it feels like Jeff is gaining this momentum. I think Jeff's going to be the star, and then you come out with the Windows Media Player entrance, and I remember being in that moment, going like, that's like the most genius thing I've ever seen. Like that right there with the little fact in the bottom and everything.
Matt strongly dislikes mustard.
Yeah. And it was
always, whenever I do Matt Hardy version 1, I talk with that stupid cadence too.
You have to.
Yeah, you have to.
When you're explaining the entrance to people, because back then, I mean, Windows Media Player was like it was a big thing.
Yeah, it was.
When you're explaining what this is to people, does everybody get it, or were there people that are like, "What are you talking about?"
Well, I did. I said, the internet is becoming a big thing. What if we did this and suggested that? And they actually said, "What if we put a fact there?" That was actually The Office.
Wow,
someone gave
that's
me that.
cool.
But that, it was like we kind of collaborated on it, and it's cool. I did that, and I remember there were people that said, like, we got to tell you, Matt, I know you think the internet is going to be a big deal for pro wrestling, but it's not. It's not. And look at where we're at today.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of a deal.
Yeah, kind of a deal.
Kind of a big deal. When you guys first left WWE, what was your thought? Because it was really the first time, aside from clearly the very, very, very beginning of your career, but it's like the first time that you're stars, and you're kind of leaving the ranch. What was there any sort of, how does this work outside of WWE for you guys? Or was there like, yeah, I mean, we've established ourselves as stars in the industry. This should be good. This is what we should be doing.
It was real weird for me. I actually did a Q&A with Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler a while back at a convention, and I got to tell this little story about the call from Jim Ross the first time I denied their offer to go to rehab for drug rehabilitation, and ultimately he said, well, at least you know that I was right at the time. But that was the first time I denied that, and I went like a full year, and I didn't even watch wrestling. So when all that stuff went down, like you and Lita, that I really wasn't paying attention to it.
That's really interesting, especially because you grew up a fan. So it's not just like, wow, this is what I've been doing with my life. You're like literally shutting off this thing that I'm sure you defined yourself as a wrestling fan before you defined yourself as a pro wrestler. And now you found yourself in this spot where you're completely cut out from it.
Yeah, and I was riding dirt bikes again, not thinking I was going to be a successful dirt bike racer or anything, but I just loved motocross so much. And back then I really loved it and was building my track, throughout that year. But yeah, just
Did you legitimately think you were done with pro wrestling?
No, I think I knew I would go back, but I ended up going back and wrestling AJ Styles my first run in TNA when TNA was a brand new kind of fresh thing. So yeah, after that year, I was ready to come back.
And then Matt, like when Jeff's at home and you're wrestling, that's kind of the first time that you're the only Hardy there.
Yeah.
Was that strange for you? Was that difficult for you?
It was definitely strange.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was difficult, but it was strange. And like Jeff said, he was in an interesting spot in his life. So, I was definitely wanting him to be good as far as that goes. I was happy when he was doing TNA, and just that he was doing something and involved. But it was the one positive thing I can say was it gave me an opportunity. I was in a real good place then. I felt like I'd got myself in the best shape I'd ever got myself in, and it gave me an opportunity to build some equity into me as Matt Hardy, the performer, doing something different besides just something as the Hardy Boy. So I thought that was a positive for me.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it was. I mean, was that around the time that you and MVP were having your competitions?
That was a little later.
Later, yeah.
Jeff came back in 2006, and we came back. We won the tag titles again, and we had that. And like, we're super hot again. Jeff is killing it, doing great in every capacity, and we're still both doing single stuff now. Like, he's won the IC title, right. I win the US title, and then we get to that point where he becomes the WWE champion, and I'm the ECW champion simultaneously, which was pretty cool. And like, we're both thriving really strong in singles competition.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a. I mean, there's so much there. I love that you guys are such representatives of TNA now, because you also, you both have such like deep histories.
We do
in TNA. And you, Matt, you talk about like realizing that Jeff is the more popular Hardy for a period of time, but I would argue, and this is not said disrespectfully, that there was one period of time where you became completely front and center, and Jeff, you got to kind of step to the background and be Brother Nero for a little bit and just allow Broken Matt to be this thing. I mean, Matt, I remember doing an interview with you right in the beginning of the Broken Matt thing.
Oh, I was in total shtick.
In total shtick, could not break, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And that's what, and that's as you should have been. But I also remember that was at a time when TNA was not in the shape that it's in now, right? It was like a time when people they like to dunk on TNA. Sure. Oh, look what's going on over here. And I will never forget.
TNA LOL.
TNA LOL era. Yes, TNA LOL era. And I will never forget that you start doing the Broken Matt stuff. And at first, almost like it's almost Pavlovian. People are like, look at this dumb thing they're doing now. And then they start watching. And then people who maybe aren't watching TNA start watching, and they go, oh my God, this is amazing. Oh my God, this is brilliant. And slowly you watch that wave turn where it's not just new people getting turned on to it. It's everybody who in the very beginning was like, this is so dumb, going like, this might be the greatest thing going on in wrestling right now. Was there a time when you were doing that first run of Broken Matt where you realized like, oh, this isn't just the biggest thing going on in TNA right now. Like the entire wrestling world is paying attention to this?
Yes, because it's real cool. We were at a time where like all the stars aligned, because also things were going very viral, and JB was great with the whole Broken Matt character too. Jeremy Borash.
Oh yes,
he would shoot it for me, and we were great. We would collaborate, but we got to the point where we realized the first thing we did a contract signing for a match we were going to have. And at this contract signing, we did it in a cinematic fashion. It's crazy. I tell Jeff, we must go to the genesis of our story. Just the terminology I'm trying to use, archaic words that people don't normally say.
Are you looking up words like in your free time, trying to figure out like, oh, I want to add this in? Are you investing in a thesaurus, or do you have these words in your head?
There are some words I had in my head, but I was not afraid to look up words.
Good.
I would take something, and I would take something, and I'd like look up synonyms, and especially ones like it'd say archaic, archaic. Okay, that's great. That's what I want.
And then when you find a word that you love, are you practicing different pronunciations? Because your syllable, you were all over the map with your syllables.
100%. Yeah. I finally kind of got everything locked in. At the beginning, I wasn't sure. The very first promo when I went out and I talked as Broken Matt, no one knew I was going to talk with this accent. And I don't even know what the accent was. I remember I went out there, we went to the ring, and I came back, and I was out there because I just had this very strange and powerful premonition. And because of my condition of being broken, I must do this to Brother Nero, the nefarious Brother Nero. And I come back through, and they're like, that was... Thanks. And then I remember my wife, she said, what the hell was that? I said, well, I told them I was going to be different.
Yeah.
You're looking for different, brother. I'm going to give you different. But then the strange and weird pronunciations of words is something people look forward to. And we tried to make it into memes, me and JB. We would say, what are memes? And there were people that would text each other, like send, oh, let's do this, blah, blah, have great plans. It'll be fun. Not like last time. They would just send back, delete, people would text up that. It was crazy how it became like so popular in pop culture. It's weird. The thing I was going to say, though, when I knew we had them, is we did that first contract signing. I did all this strange talk. I take Jeff out into the building. We go into like the first ring we had, and then we're going to sign this contract. And I had my wife come out with a little fake baby, and she throws the baby in, or he's got to catch like it was our son Max, and he's like, what the hell? And I bust a bottle over his head, and I throw him off the apron, and we break a table, but it's not a standard table. It's a round table. It has one pillar in the middle. There's concrete underneath, and we had like sawed it so that we could actually break it, and the top breaks off and flips over. It just looks insane.
Yeah.
But I started reading feedback to this, especially online, and people were saying like, this is wild. This is a great throwback to the Papa Shango days, the Undertaker, when there was magic and supernatural characters. This is the greatest stuff I've ever seen. I'm so happy they're bringing this back in pro wrestling. Then the other 50% said, oh my God, what are Matt and Jeff Hardy doing? This is the worst shit I've ever seen. This is awful. And but there were so many of those comments. It was just nonstop. It was so polarizing, but people were talking about it. Yeah. So it's like, we've tapped into something because they give a shit one way or the other.
That was also one of the first big watch-along things. Like, you had, as a person who's made, like, you had to put a video out of you watching.
Yeah, the final deletion.
The final, like the second the final deletion came out, you had to put out a video of you watching. You had to put out a video of you reacting to it. You had to, that was, we were talking before we started about everybody needing a take on everything now. Yeah. That was one of the very first, like, if you're in the space or even are thinking about being in the space, you have to have some kind of content about the final deletion.
Exactly.
Which is,
it's very true, and so many people did, and it's so many people. Like, I've talked to people that said, like, yeah, we watched the final deletion at first, and our take was a little different, but now we love it. It's like our favorite. It's so amazing.
Yeah, and that's also like just a great lesson about wrestling. Like, people who want to give the take first, let it sit for a second. You know what I mean? Let it sit.
Let it simmer, brother.
Let it simmer. See how you feel. And Jeff, were you just kind of letting Matt, like, take the wheel on that and going like, I trust you?
Sure. Yeah, I had no idea when he said this to me. He said, I don't know, we have a match, man. You eventually hit me with this big swanton bomb or something. I'm just going to dye a blonde streak in my hair and be different. That's all he said. I had no idea what it was going to be. But even with that, the little thing he wrote up with the contract signing and the round table, I just remember being in his building going, oh, my God, this is kind of sketchy. It's real sketchy. I don't know if this is going to be all right. But something inside me, I was like, I guess redneck engineer, and I was going, nah, it'll be fine. It'll be fine, and sure enough it was.
What was it like for you when you realized that act, because it was very evident that it had gone past TNA because you brought it outside of TNA. You go to, like, going to Ring of Honor and having that match the night before WrestleMania with the Young Bucks, and like the fact that you took that act along there, and this Ring of Honor crowd is just as into it as the TNA crowd into it. Right. It's just as into it. Realizing that, and it's a very rare thing to create something that is beyond a singular promotion. What was that ride like?
It was really neat. Something that, you know, I've talked about this in some of our Hardy parties when I do like my podcast live and Jeff does a concert. But a lot of people don't know this. I had been talking with the Young Bucks, who were both great friends with the Bucks, right? And they had talked. There was a point in time where I popped up as Broken Matt on the screen at Ring of Honor. This is why I was with TNA. And the Bucks were this close to being on Total Nonstop Deletion, Apocalypto, but they had to be in Japan. We were almost talking about even bringing them out to the Hardy compound and filming something to insert it into it.
Oh, wow.
And that's when we invited all of the teams in Space and Time. We were on a quest to be the greatest tag team of all of Space and Time.
That's right.
You know, we had Rock and Roll Express out there, and we had some other teams, whatever. It was cool. But I popped up at the end of their match at Final Battle and challenged them, said, we'll be coming for these titles. And there had been heat between Ring of Honor and TNA from when they had split years back. And we had kind of put them back on the same page, and we were going to do a cross-promotional angle.
And so they were cooperating.
Yes, which had never really been done before, where the Bucks were going to come to TNA, and we were going to go to Ring of Honor, and then we're going to have a cinematic match at the Hardy compound and just do all these different things, right? And I thought it had been really cool. But once TNA was bought to Anthem, and we're a lot of the people that kind of kept it around so that they could actually be sold to a new owner, Jeff Jarrett came in, and he was kind of talent relations and wasn't in the best place in his life. And then we had a little bit of a disagreement because we'd been promised these deals, and he was trying to lessen them a little bit, whatever. And we ended up being there. And I think some of this maybe was known around the business and the industry a little bit. And I'll never forget, Michael Hayes had told me, he said in a meeting, Vince said, what are all these people out there? Why do they keep doing this delete shit? Why do they keep doing this? Delete. What do they do? They said, well, that's the thing the Hardys are doing now. You know, the Hardys are doing a thing. He said, well, damn it, call them up and bring them back home. That's almost how that started.
I mean, bro, I remember WrestleMania 33 there in Orlando. It was the first WrestleMania that I was working with WWE doing the pre-shows, right?
Right.
I had my tuxedo on and everything. And I was going to the back right before the tag team ladder match. I figured I'd watch it on a screen. I sit down, watch it on a screen, and thank God a friend of mine just goes, hey, where you going? And I go, no, I'm just going to watch in the back or something. He goes, hey, go back out. I didn't say what it was. He's like, go back out. Just trust me. Just go back out. And being able, I mean, it was some of the best advice literally I've ever gotten. Because going out there in that stadium and hearing the reaction that you guys got, I mean, where does that rank in literally the greatest moments in your career?
I think that's number one for me, man.
It's got to be, right?
I mean, I think the further I get away, it just becomes greater and greater and greater. Yeah. Because like in that moment, it was so special. But just as time passes, this is when WrestleMania has become a mainstream thing now, right?
Yes.
So many people say, "Oh my God, I was there at WrestleMania 33, and I saw you guys came back, and I was crying." I mean, or "Oh my God, I was on TV, and I'll never forget. And you guys came back, I was gonna cry." And it was such an emotional moment because it was almost like, you know, we had left WWE, and then we like it went out, and we, you know, got ourselves better, and we got these new characters, and we got them over, and we made it like crazy popular, and then we brought it back to WWE, you know, and like people were like, "Wow, the Hardys are back and they've succeeded." So it was a real feel-good moment too.
And also, I think time has passed now where people can reflect, and like for a moment to really be a moment, you have to look back on it, right?
Yeah.
And so enough time has passed that people go, "Wow, that really was like nuts when that happened."
It was special, man.
Was there for you?
So special.
Because you come right, you're Broken Matt still technically at the time, but you can hear the Hardy music playing, you can hear the reaction. Was there a part of you going, I don't know if I should be doing this Broken Matt character? Because they, like, there's a thing about, I feel like, coming back to the WWE. I think the same thing happened to Hogan when he tried to come back as NWO Hogan. Like, WWE fans, it's almost like when you come back and you're beloved by that audience, no time has passed, you're back like you never left. But that also means that it's for most, other than maybe Cody Rhodes, for everybody else, It's like, we remember you as we got the Hardy Boys back.
Yeah.
Was there a part of you going like, I don't know if I should be deleting or I should be a Hardy Boy as it's happening?
Yeah, you know, that's a really interesting point that you said that. Something else I don't think I've ever talked about a lot. I know when we came back and we talked with Vincent Hunter for a little bit, he said, "Okay, well, you know, we'll come out, we'll get this Hardy Boys run." He said, "And hopefully we can get back and do some Broken Matt. I know you would like to do that," especially Hunter. Hunter was a big advocate for it. If Hunter would have been in charge whenever I ended up leaving WWE and I went to AEW, I probably would have stayed.
Interesting.
I could have done some Broken Matt stuff or whatever. I just know, like, Vince, it wasn't his creation, so like wasn't his thing really.
Right.
But whenever I went there, my goal was to kind of be this morphed character where, like, I'm Matt Hardy of the Hardy Boys, but I'm also half-ass Broken Matt. And I want, obviously, once you do a character, that becomes you. You know, and you change. You know, the delete thing will always be a part of me. Whether if I'm just acting like total Matt Hardy, one half the Hardy Boys, if I'm Matt Hardy version 1, whatever, delete is always the thing. Big Money Matt, whoever. So I was trying to morph those things and just keep a semblance of Broken Matt in it so that we still could, you know, segue off and do something with Broken Matt, and we ended up doing that later, fortunately.
Yeah, yeah. How was it working with Bray, coming together and like realizing, and I feel like that came at a time too where like both you trying to figure out what are we really doing with this Broken Matt in the WWE, and Bray trying to figure out like what are we really doing with Bray Wyatt in the WWE right now. I feel like you guys coming together in that moment was very synergetic for both of you. It
really was. And also Jeff had been hurt, so he was out. He'd had surgery. He was injured, so I was kind of doing my own thing. And then they had a plan. I don't even think they cued me in on it until the last moment, because they'd had me. They said, "We want you to do a few matches where you lose a little bit and then you kind of like snap, you know." And they had suggested about, do you have a new character you would like to do? And I had something else that I was totally going to do, which I was going to go by full Hardy. I had an idea of a character I've never done, but that is something I had pitched and talked about doing. But then, like, I remember I pulled up the building that day and Bray said, "Hey," such a Wyndham terminology. He said, "Hey, Hoot, we're doing it today, brother. We're starting the whole angle. Bray Wyatt, Broken Matt Hardy." I was like, we are? He said, "Yeah." He said, "We're having a match. We're doing this. And at the very end, you start deleting in the corner, and then we're going to go into a whole thing, and they've got all this stuff." I said, "Okay, sounds good." And I remember I come in that day, and Michael, he says, "You got to talk to Vince." And he said, "You know, you got to explain this character to him." And it was wild, man. I just sat there and talked to Vince for like 30, 40 minutes about the Broken Matt. He said, "So what was your inspiration behind Broken Matt?" And I start telling him things. He's, What would be in the background? Planets, the moon. What would be the background of the scenario? Because I was saying space and time.
Sure.
You know,
and he's literally going very literal with it.
Very literal with it, you know what I mean? He said, "When you do a promo in front of a planetarium?" You know, he had all these great ideas.
Now I'm on space, and now I'm stuck on.
And then I was even. I pitched this idea. Have you ever watched Dexter? The show Dexter?
Sure.
So a big Dexter fan, right? Yeah. And there were things I pulled from Dexter that did it. And you know how Dexter sees his dad? That's like, you know, his kind of his personality.
Yeah.
I said, so I'm thinking, would it be possible, Vince, if we did this with Broken Matt? Because I wanted to do this. I was going to do it in TNA. I said, I know Jeff's not hurt. I said, what if I could like be here and I'm getting motivated to do stuff as Woken Matt now, and someone gives me advice, and it's Jeff. He's hurt, but like He's just there, but he's not really there. I'm talking to him. Somebody looks and they see him and he's not there. He's a ghost or whatever else. And he says, I don't know if that would work. He was so not into that idea. I could tell immediately. But anyway, I pitched him a bunch of stuff, and Broken Matt was so far out there thinking out of the box, and that's how I always did stuff. I mean, for God's sakes, I was talking to giraffes and kangaroos. And, I knew what essence were in those things. So it was a little overwhelming for Vince, I think, because it's not necessarily his thing. And I think at the end of the day, if it was his creation and he had started, then he may have been more behind it. But it is what it is. But I'm so happy I got to work with Bray and we got the team. That was one of the greatest 9-10 months of my career.
Yeah. I think to me, this is a very it's a good example of what pro wrestling really is. It doesn't always have to be logical. Sometimes it's just about emotion.
Yeah.
And one of the things that when I think about it in those terms, it always makes me laugh. Jeff, when you came to AEW, it's one of my favorite sort of just pure emotion debuts, right? Because Matt's in the ring getting his ass kicked, multiple people, and the music hits, and Jeff Hardy is here, and real quick, before he's going to help his brother from the beatdown, he's got to stay on the ramp and get his shit in a little bit and do the dance. And I'm like, in any place besides pro wrestling, I got to get out there quick because my brother's getting his ass kicked. But in pro wrestling, and the fans are going to want a little dance. Then I'll help my brother who's getting his ass kicked.
Yeah, that was such a last-minute decision. I was, oh my God, what can I do? And I literally said, I wonder if I can juke and run at the same time.
I also wanted to, so full disclosure, I mean, this probably happened because of me. If I hadn't even suggested it, you probably would have ran straight down. So I just said, this is my take learning from Michael Hayes, right? Jeff is a huge star. And people do want to see that juke in that moment. The Hardy Boys music's hitting, right. Whatever. And my take, I said, have these guys beat me down. The music hits. Everyone stops beating me up. They turn what the hell? This is Jeff Hardy. And you see him dance for a little bit, and then he comes down to the ring. I don't know. Maybe it was Tony Khan. He's just like, why would you stop beating on? I don't know where this came from, but they just kept beating the shit out of me. That's what happened. And then Jeff came out, and Jeff's like, now got this choice, right? He's like, okay, I was gonna dance, but okay, I'll just kind of dance and run. So that's kind of how that came to be.
I mean, people love it. Literally, I was at Fanatics Fest, judging all the WWE superstar entrances. Yeah. I don't even know if you guys know this. The Hardy Boys was one of the entrances, and there was a ton of kids, adults, whatever, this year doing Hardy Boys entrances at that WWE, and every single one of them was juking. You got to do it.
That's amazing, man.
You got to do it.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, for you guys having this run right now in TNA being where it's at. I mean, I feel like TNA as a promotion is one of the greatest sort of stories in pro wrestling in terms of a promotion, just no quit. Surviving, it's just at some point there will be a documentary about the history of this company that is unbelievable.
Yes,
but with the partnership that you guys have with NXT and WWE, where you guys are now back on WWE shows, but also bringing all these eyeballs onto TNA, and you're telling all these fresh stories with fresh people on TNA. What is this TNA run like for you guys?
It's great for me. We've been back a little over a year now, I believe, and it just feels so good to be valuable, I guess, again.
Yes.
I feel very valuable.
Yep.
And just to be with TNA, because they've been there for me through some of my dark times. So it's just so cool to feel this evolution of it and growing again to be something bigger than it's ever been. And so, this year's Slammiversary, to be a part of it in a ladder match, I mean, it's just huge to see what's happened in just the last year, let alone what's possible in the next few years.
And I mean, and Slamversary is going to be a huge show. It's here. It's in Long Island, right?
Yeah.
And it's massive. The venue that you guys are in, based on the fact that TNA for a while was having a problem. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that I remember if TNA was coming to New York, it was in a 300-400 seat building,
right?
And now you guys are back in arenas.
Yeah.
It's kind of remarkable.
It is. I mean, the growth over the last year, within a year and a half, has been just unbelievable. I mean, this resurgence has been awesome. In January, we had 5,000 people in Dallas.
That's
you know
amazing.
what I mean? Which was unbelievable. It's been great, and much like Jeff said, it's nice to be put in a position to succeed.
Yes.
And that's what we've done. Credit to Tommy Dreamer. Tommy Dreamer understands. Matt Jeff Hardy at this point, pro wrestling at the end of the day isn't about the actual wrestling match, and it isn't about the work rate in the match. That stuff is important, and it does apply to things. But what pro wrestling is about is creating these characters and these stories and these journeys they're on that makes the people that watch the show emotionally invested in those people. You make them actually care about those people, and that's what sells tickets. That's what makes money. And we've been put in that position right now where we're telling a story, and we have a real great story, I think, going in to Slammiversary in this ladder match. Coming up, you're going to see where, since we've lost the titles, you know, like maybe we're doubting ourselves. You know, are we still as good as we want to be because we don't want to overstay our welcome? We want to be at the top of our game if we're doing this. Like at Slammiversary in this 4-way ladder match against First Class, the Rascals, and the champions, the Nemesis. We're finally getting our tag team title rematch, by the way. And in this match, if we don't go out there and win this match, then, you know, maybe it's time for us to think about calling it a career.
Wow. Well, guys, everybody, you should be watching TNA all the time anyway, but Slammiversary is on the 20th of July. If you're local, if you're in the New York area, make sure that you're there. If not, watch it on the TNA app or wherever you get TNA pay-per-views. And, I mean, guys, we could talk for another several hours. You guys are, I'm so glad that you guys stopped by and hung out for a bit. And congratulations on everything.
Thank you for having us, man.
Of course.
Thank you, man. It's been a hell of a run.
For sure.
It's amazing. Thank you, guys.